There's a lot going on in the world. A lot of bad things are happening. Why Western civilization desires to invite Islamic caliphate into Christian societies is a sign of liberalism gone bad. Liberalism has always been politically bipolar, as I stated in my book, The Fiscals. The Reinvention of the United States by affect, not effect. As I divided the book into 2 volumes, volume 1 being the effects of poor decisions like the one I just mentioned, and volume 2, the theory that we cannot reform, we must reinvent, meaning we just need to replace statist liberalism's bad policies, laws, and decisions with good decisions, creative decisions, creative ideas, from civil works projects to reinventing of the divorce laws state by state, to getting off federal income tax, disputing in court, defining income derived as only capital risk-taking investments and the profit that can be taxed, as opposed to private property, which is in exchange for your skills and your craft and time and place, which are your wages. I want to share with you 2 big ideas that are the civil works projects that I mentioned. One, I suggested to Ted Cruz when he ran against Donald Trump, being the senator from the largest border in the United States, 1,900 miles of southern border with Mexico. Him being the senator from Texas, he was 1,200 to 1,300 miles of those 1,900. And I suggested that in order to beat Trump, you had to have a better wall than his. His only had his name on it. I offered Ted Cruz a wall with a train on it, 50 feet up in the air, 50 feet below the ground, from the naval base south of San Diego, inside or within the San Diego harbor, on the border, all the way to Brownsville, Port of Brownsville, Texas. Since it's 50 feet up in the air with a natural gas pipeline in the bulwark, and 50 feet below, all the drug tunnels had to be carved up. No different than when the Jews penetrate the tunnels that Hamas has created in Gaza. Ours is Mexican cartel activity, arms dealing, drug dealing, and God forbid, when we find out that there's children trafficked under these tunnels. The only way to massively cut them is to pour concrete on the border. And then Mexico will give us territory, and the United States give up territory, and the federal government establishes the border bank, first conceived by Bill Clinton for a passenger train. But this is not about passengers, this is about freight. It's called the Great Wall of Will. And then I was ignored. We were on a conference call where I described this idea. And everybody picked up their mute buttons because I wasn't supposed to pick up mine, but I went ahead and said it because it was the only chance I had. And everybody wanted to know more about it. But there it died. He lost the primary to Donald Trump. Speaker Pelosi would not give Donald Trump the money to build the wall. And then you know what happened in 2020. Rigged election, delirious Joe, traitor Joe Biden becomes president, and 20 million people cross the border. 4% of the entire Cuban population were amongst those 20 million. How many of them were Islamic Caliphate terrorists? How many? How many are not terrorists, but they're going to be terrorists as soon as they get the call? See my point? only a good idea can rid ourselves of a bad idea. So check it out, the Great Wall of Will. I stole the name from the Great Wall of China and the will of the American people. Then comes the other grandiose idea, which is the full development using Article 5 of the Treaty of Relations of 1934 that repealed the Platt Amendment with the Republic of Cuba, that says if we can demonstrate that Cuba is a threat to the southern ports of the United States through waterborne diseases, we can, by eminent domain, redevelop the base as a quarantine facility. Stays in Cuba's possession, but nevertheless, we can do what we wish with our base, which is larger than Miami-Dade County. So I came up with the idea of Gitmo Free Zone. I asked ChatGPT recently to create, in the case of Gitmo, you can see it's the shining city on the hill. Fully executable by the largest port in all of Cuba, larger than the port of Mariel, where the Chinese are building their version of a free zone. Think about that. They're waiting to lift the embargo. They've already loaned the $4 or $5 billion that has not been paid. Therefore, you can see why they were controlling the Panama Canal, both sides of it. Notice it was Trump's first allegation in the first week of his presidency. To counteract ZEDM in the port of Mariel, we would have Gitmo Free Zone. .us. The story of Cuba is a real sad set of affairs for people like me who were born in the States to Cuban parents fleeing communism. As I look further, did Americans know that it was the Cubans, the oligarchy in Cuba, under colonial rule of Spain, that funded and financed the 38 ships that eventually went on to win the battle for the Chesapeake, and the surviving ships assisted Washington and Alexander Hamilton in the Battle of Yorktown. Without this funding, donation by the Spanish people in colonial Cuba, orchestrated originally in 1779 with the Battle of Pensacola, that closed off the Mississippi River to the British Armada. It was a sign on the wall that America needed Cuba, who happened to be 250 years to 300 years older than the original colonies. Some estimates put that Spanish people were in the upwards to 4 million people in the area of Mexico City and Taos, New Mexico. That population already had zoning, two-story buildings, street corners, quite evolved as a civilization when Anglo-America was first developing in Jamestown, with maybe 1 million people total, maybe 2 million, maybe 3 million. Think of the difference. The United States has always been Spanish, Anglo. One of the blights, or one of the stains on the Federalist Papers, as I've read them, is the only antagonistic prose in the Federalist Papers are the attack upon the Papatists. Since the Anglo-American population came here escaping religious persecution, blamed on the Pope at the time, when in fact it was the King of England, King Henry, who first began or commenced in protest, Protestant protest, get it, in protest of the church, began his tyrannical ways. It wasn't the Pope, the Catholic Pope. Nevertheless, the colonists were disgruntled at the Papatists. It was the Papatists of France and Spain that sold a giant portion of the United States without fire, without war, without battle. Just Louisiana Purchase, the whole center of the nation, starting in Louisiana, was sold, including Florida. Made a suggestion in the Abstent Manifesto. Look it up. Quite visionary, don't you think? King rejected the offer. And he told the king, well, we're going to take it by force if you don't sell us with dollars. And that's what happened. 50 years later, Theodore Roosevelt, in his Rough Rider campaign, took credit for ridding Cuba of Spanish colonialism. Short-lived, nevertheless. In 1959, America, ignoring Cuba, patronage and benefactor of the Battle of Yorktown, not a beneficiary of the Battle of Yorktown, America was nowhere to be found when it was their time to defend against tyranny, as the Cubans did against British tyranny in the colonies. That was the day, as stated in the book, the day that the United States lost and was denied its own manifest destiny, excluding Cuba from it.